For any of you that need translation, again, good morning. Hope we're all rested. Later this morning, we'll be going to visit Babyn Yar. Many of you won't be necessarily familiar with Babyn Yar. And in some respects, when we're talking about the Holocaust, the name that most often springs to mind is Auschwitz-Birkenau. And of course, what happened in the death camps were utterly atrocious. But from a Jewish perspective, there is something particularly brutal, something particularly visceral about what happened here in Babyn Yar. And it's something that should be spoken about. It's something that should always be remembered. And our partners at the Babyn Yar Holocaust Memorial Center have put a lot of work and thought into this process of how best to remember and how best to honor the memory of those that perished there, and also how to mark and use, if you will, the site as a warning to history. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to invite once again the Director of European Affairs for Babyn Yar Holocaust Memorial Center, Mr. Marek Siwiec, to join us to say a few opening remarks before we get things underway.
Good morning, everybody. Very difficult to make introduction to this special morning because, as Alex said, we will touch something terrible in a few minutes. I want only to tell you that Babyn Yar now, as I said yesterday, is a place of commemoration. You will feel comfortable there, first time after many years. The second, that behind this, what you will see, there is a lot of scientific work which was done by the group of European and international scholars with the Ukrainian scholars to write the story of the Holocaust in this territory, not only in Babyn Yar, but in the occupied territory of the former Soviet Union. The first chief historian, his name was Karel Berghoff. This is I can say, one of the most respected scholar, Dutch professor, and the group chaired by him has prepared the historical narrative, which was presented, adopted. It is the, how to say, obliged for everything was going on around the commemoration as a document which writes about this, what is already known, and putting questions in the places which we don't know how it was precisely. So this document do not avoid the question about the collaboration, do not avoid the question of participation of underground Ukraine in this terrible crime, which was Holocaust on this territory. But also this document shows the brave people of Ukraine who sacrificed their lives, took a risk of saving people. So I must tell you that the next person whom you will follow is the next chief of the scientific board, Honorable Father Patrick Dubois, who is successfully continue the job of international scholar family focused on these issues. And also, today I would like to say that I'm very glad that join us Ruslan Kavasiuk, who is director of our foundation. Ruslan, show yourself, because he was waiting for the test. So congratulations that somebody speaks about your negative way. In this case, deserve congratulations. So Ruslan is responsible also for the scientific part of the job, for education, for publication, for library, for all of this, what is, in Polish language we call it nadbudowa, I don't know how it is in English, definitely Alex knows. So whatever it means, you will have good time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Marek. Just to let you know that we hope to have Father Patrick Dubois here, but unfortunately he got ill before he came. It wasn't COVID, thank goodness, but he caught a very nasty cold stroke flu, so he's joining us via Zoom from the United States. So, Chaim, if we can start the Zoom, please, with Father Dubois. Father Patrick Dubois, ladies and gentlemen, will be with us imminently. He's the head of the Babyn Yar Holocaust Memorial Center Academic Council.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Father Dubois. Thank you.
I apologize. Yes, I got the flu, so I couldn't travel. I would like to explain you are in a very special place when you come in Babyn Yar in Kiev.
Okay.
There is no train, no railway, no gas chamber, no building. When the Nazi entered in Soviet Union, because it was not Ukraine itself, it was Soviet Union, they decided to shoot all the Jews and the Roma one by one. So since 20 years, we investigate in this village. We have filmed 8,000 people, all the people were present at the killing, not only in Babyn Yar, but in every village, from Lithuania to Azerbaijan. So you must understand that these shootings took place in public. The Germans arrived very early in a place, choose the place where to shoot. So for Babyn Yar, it was a Walloon at the border of Kiev, but in some village is near the market, in some village is behind the church, it's anywhere. They dig a mass grave, not in Babyn Yar because it was already dug, and they announced to the Jews they will be deported to Palestine or they will be moved somewhere. And people have to gather in the street with their belongings because they are supposed to be deported. And you know it was Soviet Union, so people knew what was deportation. And they make them walk. Most of the time, people were thinking to go to the train, even in Babyn Yar, many people went to the train station because they were thinking to take the train and go somewhere. And suddenly the Germans say, no, links recht, it's finished. At that moment, the Jews understand they will be shot. They try to destroy their money, through their jewels, etc., etc. And they will be forced to undress. Why to undress? Because in the clothing were the belongings, the money, the coins, etc. And after they will be shot one by one. One by one, and because the German established a rule, one bullet, one Jew, one Jew, one bullet. It was the request of army to make economy of ammunition. This shooting didn't stop until the end of the war. Many people think they shot people and after they did Auschwitz. No, it's not true. They shot people, Jews, Roma, and other sometimes partisan until the end of the war in 1944. Altogether, they shot more than 2 million Jews. It means 2 times Auschwitz. What is very, very important to understand, it was not secret. Germans had a lot of Leica, took a lot of pictures, souvenir pictures that they sent to their family, to their love. I remember a letter of a soldier, a shooter, he sent a card, a postcard to his love. In Germany, he said, I want you to see how we play with Jewish children, we send them like balloons and we shoot. Imagine if we don't do that, what we would do to Germany. The shooters were sometimes SS, sometimes police, sometimes army, sometimes local German origin, and sometimes also collaborators, but mainly German. What is the most difficult to understand is that it took place in public, it was advertised, everybody knew it in Germany because they sent postcards and the communication was open, but it doesn't stay in memory. Today, if you go in a street in Paris, in Berlin, in New York, in Amsterdam, if you say, what do you think about Holocaust? One word, they will say Auschwitz. Auschwitz was secret and everybody remembers. The shootings were public in broad daylight and people don't get it, don't remember. It's also very important to understand that because it's a lesson for today. You know, today, I work also on mass killing in Iraq. It's also in public and also in West Africa, and nobody cares and nobody remembers. When you have no train, no railway, no barbed wire, only mass grave, people don't get it. So the fact that you come today to Babyn Yar is one of the biggest shooting places in all Soviet Union. There were all over other big places, in Lviv also, in Bogdanivka, near Odessa, near Brest-Litovsk in Belarus, also places of 50,000, 40,000. But surely, Babyn Yar is more than symbolic. First, this shooting took place very early in the war. It was officially a riposte to bombing in the streets in Kiev. For me, a big mystery is how they could force all the Jews to go outside their building. I think you have seen the building in Kiev, sometimes it's 5-floor building, how you could force everybody to go down with their belongings and to walk in the middle of the city, and apparently with no reaction of the city. These people were brought to Valon, forced to undress, and shot one by one. Imagine to shoot more than 30,000 people, Jews, in 2-3 days, one by one. Babies, grandma, disabled people, young, old, no exception. The order was really to exterminate the last of the Jews, and we have found 2,700 extermination sites in ex-Soviet Union, and there's never been an exception. We never found a place where the Germans say, oh, he's too young, this baby, we don't shoot him. Or his mommy is too old, too sick, we don't shoot her. No exception. It was really an extermination. And I would say Babyn Yar doesn't stay in memory in Western Europe, but also in Soviet Union was completely eradicated. I came the first time in Babyn Yar during Soviet time. It was even forbidden to say the victims were Jews. We could know nothing. I remember I was with a delegation of the World Jewish Congress long time ago, and the lady was a Soviet person, and she said, here are the places where the Jews have been shot. And I say, how do you know, ma'am? And she said, don't you see that the trees are green? At that period, we could say Jews are down because the trees are green, imagine. And the Soviets did all what they could to eradicate this place of shooting. They destroyed the place. It was forbidden to say they were Jews. Even in archives, they don't use the term Jew, they say innocent civilian. It's why what happens today in Babyn Yar, and why I'm so happy, I'm president of Yad Inunum in France. It's this organization who makes this investigation since 20 years. But in Babyn Yar, I am in charge of the scientific committee. I'm so happy to cooperate with Babyn Yar because it's the first time since it happened that we are building something. You will see a wonderful, amazing synagogue. You will see the first memorials, and one day will appear an Holocaust museum. You cannot know how many times people were saying they did something. I visited the first stone of the museum 25 years ago, and the second stone never happened. So I support them because they are doing something. And as you know, they are doing something in a complicated country and in a complicated situation today with the neighbors. You see that in the news every day. Why is it important? Why in a Walloon where there is nothing to see? Jews have been underground and burned, so there is really nothing to see. And you have everything to see. Why is it important? Because this methodology of killing today is a paradigm. Today, when you have a mass killing in Syria, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Western Africa, there is no camp, no train, no gas chamber. They understood. When you have mass grave, no memory. So you shoot people, you bomb them, and you put them in mass grave. That's the actual methodology of killing all over the planet. As I say, the Jews say never again, and the mass killers of today in Syria and anywhere say no more Auschwitz, no more Auschwitz. I remember I had a discussion with an old Polish man, very well known in Poland, 30 years ago. He told me Hitler made a mistake. And I said, which mistake? He told me he built Auschwitz. And I said, why is it for you a mistake? He said, because the Jews are coming back. When they kill them in a balloon or in a forest, they never came back. And I would say he was right. He was right until Babyn Yar now existed. Until this organization is fighting to come back. And the fact that in this complicated situation today, you decided to come in Ukraine, to go this morning in Babyn Yar, it's completely a revolution. Nobody normally was coming so much. You come to a place that was eradicated. They shot more than 30,000 people in 2-3 days, and altogether in Babyn Yar they shot 100,000 people because after they shot everybody 2 times a week. So you come to say never again today, not never again before. Never again in Syria, never again in Burkina Faso, never again in Mali, in Niger, in Boko Haram place. You're coming, I would say it's an event of protestation, and it's to say wherever you are making killing place now with mass graves and shooting, wherever you are doing that, we will come back soon or late. So don't be surprised. You will be to Babyn Yar in the cold. You will see wonderful realization. Don't look for trains, railway, gas chamber. It was a wonderful place in the suburb of Babyn Yar. It became the worst killing field day and night, and stealing of the belonging of 30,000 Jews. It was a place where mostly German, were shooters. It was a place where most of the shooters have never been judged guilty in Germany. It was a place where the Soviets tried everything to eradicate it. It's a place today where Ukrainian state and organization decided, no, we come back and we'll remember for the first time in the planet a huge mass grave against all the mass killing who happened today. So I hope you will understand that you are coming, I would say, with a message, not a message only in Ukraine, but an international message to say, finally we come back 80 years after. Never too late, because unfortunately, the mass killers are still working in the planet, as you know. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Father Dubois, for that, and thank you above all for your work in bringing Babyn Yar into the public consciousness. Very, very important and valuable work. Can I ask you very, very briefly, before you go, how was it that you came across Babyn Yar, and how did it become a personal fight for you, Father Dubois?
First, I'm not Jew, according to what I know. And my grandpa in 1942 was deported from France to Ukraine, in Rabaruska, in Lviv, and in Strij, with 15,000 French soldiers who escaped and were completely anti-German. So my grandpa was witness of the killing, because in the village where he was prisoner, they shot 17,000 Jews, and it's a small village. And he never spoke, but he said outside the camp was worse than a camp. And one day, long time ago, I came back to Ukraine, and an Ukrainian mayor brought me to the mass grave with 50 farmers, because the people in Ukraine accept to speak. They accept to say they were present. They accept to be filmed. So I realized that these shootings were public. I realized that Ukrainian population wanted to speak, and also all over from Lithuanian to Russia to Azerbaijan, they accept to speak. It's why we have filmed 8,000 people present, and today it's accessible. And when Babyn Yar approached me to be part of their challenge, for me, I saw it like providence, because it was to come back to Ukraine and to give back to Ukraine what we have found since 20 years. Since 20 years, we work, 29 people in Paris, to go on the ground, investigate, find in archives, and establish the evidence shooting by shooting, because you know that the deniers are very strong all over the planet and say Holocaust never existed. So for me, and when I met Babyn Yar organization, I met Marek first, I met Ruslan, I met Ilya, I met all these wonderful people, and I saw something very weird. They are doing something. Because I know Ukraine since 20 years, and I met other groups who speak, and don't do anything. And so I say, okay, I accept to be part of that. I accept to propose that. It's why a few months ago, we published for the first time a list of 159 killers, German, with their CV, with their identity. It has never been published. It was like an anonymous crime, because it's not Babyn Yar who kills the Jews. It was human being killing human being. And we will work again to reveal more names of killers. I know Babyn Yar is collecting the name also of the victims. So we are reestablishing that as a crime. It's a criminal place. Every shooter for me is a criminal. It's not only Himmler, Heydrich, and that, and so on. It's really every guy with a machine gun, with a pistol, was assassinating people. So all my work with the scientific committee is to reestablish this place as a place of crime, and to say, okay, you shot altogether 100,000 people. Every shooter, even if he has not been judged, even if he's dead, must be declared in charge and must be declared guilty. So that's my key challenge. And we will go on revealing also which kind of guns and bombs and so on, and pistols they use to make these shootings and to destroy the place. So because, so one day I made a conference about Babyn Yar, and somebody told me, who is Mr. Babyn Yar? And it woke me up. I say, they think it's Babyn Yar who kills the Jews, and that is somebody. No, it was young German from Stuttgart, from Munich, from Köln, from Berlin, who left their city and were shooting from the first day of the war in June 41 until 44, every day, because after Babyn Yar they left and they went to other village. I will finish by that. I found a piece of archive, German archive, I cannot forget. It was a testimony of a German. He was bringing sandwiches to the shooters. He had a small van with sandwiches and tea, and he was turning around the Jews who were naked, waiting to be shot, to arrange a buffet with sandwiches and tea. And why he makes a testimony? Because the shooters made a complaint. But there was no vodka in the tea, and it was very cold. And the chief said, no vodka, because you have to shoot during 2 days, and I don't want you to be drunk. So people made a complaint. So imagine how anti-Semitism can brainwash you completely. These guys, these young Germans coming from all over Germany, modern country, were worried not to have vodka in their tea, and not paying any attention to thousands and thousands of human beings, babies, mommy, grandmommy, in the cold, waiting to be shot.
Crazy.
I say that because we have to reestablish that it was a crime done by Germans in this place and in other places with local collaborators.
Thank you, Father Dubois. Your last comments, I mean, it's a reminder of what Hannah Arendt used to call the banality of evil. Father Dubois, you're doing a tremendous job. We're very, very happy that you're involved, Jew or not. In fact, your voice is perhaps even more important. And above all, we wish you, even though you couldn't be with us today, as we say in Hebrew, refuah shlema, a full recovery. and kol hakavod for all of your work. Thank you for joining us, Father Dubois.
תודה רבה בבקשה.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my pleasure to welcome for a brief presentation about the Babyn Yar Memorial Center, the Deputy CEO, Mr. Ruslan Kavutchik.
Good morning, everyone. Please, could you turn on the presentation? Yes. So we will go to Babyn Yar after the presentation, and I will try to briefly give you some intro into this place and into the memorial complex that we're trying to create there. Next slide, please. This is basically a territory of a park that is rather big, and it goes into area of a kind of a forest in the middle of the city. So it's more than 130 hectares. Next slide, please. And the next one. As Father Dubois just said, it's the biggest mass grave of Holocaust. Next slide. And this is the map with killing sites of the similar method Nazis used to kill Jews all over Eastern Europe. And it's close to 2.5 million Jews were killed that way. Next slide. So when we speak about public culture, it's a story that has not yet been revealed for different reasons, and some of them were just said, and I will not repeat Father Patrick, but I will only say that also Soviet Union tried to completely silence this story, because it was only the Soviet people who suffered during World War II. If some Soviet people suffered more, like Jews, then it would undermine the whole concept of Soviet Union. So it was forbidden to speak about it. And head of our academic, head of our supervisory board, Natan Sharansky, was actually arrested on his way to Babyn Yar to commemorate victims of Babyn Yar. Next slide, please. But since 30 years, since Ukraine gained its independence, this story has been revealed, and first monument where we will pray today, a menorah was established, and it was a first vividly Jewish sign on the territory saying that the victims were Jews. Next slide, please. And there were many efforts to create a memorial in Babyn Yar with different groups of people, very different from America, from Ukraine, from elsewhere. And every time there was some reason to argue and not do it. But people like you've yesterday seen, Boris Zabarko, for instance, who survived Holocaust, they tell us today that we need to deliver because they want to see it while they're still alive. Next slide, please. So 5 years ago, these people established this foundation with Marek Sivits leading it, and it was supported by the Prime Minister and the President of the time. You see here Prime Minister Groisman, and the President Poroshenko just spoke before him, and Kyiv City Mayor Vitaly Klitschko is on the left. So this is a strong group of Ukrainian and Jewish and international leaders who established this group, this foundation. Next slide, please. And basically the mission of this foundation is to tell this untold story about Holocaust in Eastern Europe. And also, what is important is not only to tell it through historically fact-based story, but also create an emotional journey on this territory. I will tell you how we try to do it. Next slide, please. So, 2 years ago, when we were opening the first memorial to the victims, with names of the victims, the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, and the first President of Ukraine, Leonid Kravchuk, together with the Ministry of Culture, signed a Memorandum of Understanding and Cooperation with our foundation. Next slide, please. And these are the supervisory board, the international leaders, Ukrainian, Jewish, who lead this foundation, with Natan Sharansky as chairman. Next slide, please. Marek told you a couple of words about how the historical narrative was created by Israeli, European, North American, Ukrainian historians. And now, based on that, we create this memorial. Next slide, please. This is our academic council. As you can see, Father Patrick leads it, and there are historians from both West and Eastern Europe, North America and Israel. Next slide, please. Couple of words about the artistic concept that is very unique and important in this place that has no artifacts. So the topography itself here is an artifact, and it's an important driver behind the uniqueness of the concept. During Soviet times, it was step by step erased, and now as you walk into it, nobody remembers what place that was. Next slide, please. And since 30 years, this place was commemorated by different groups of victims. Not only Jews were killed there. There were Roma, there were psychiatric hospital patients, there were political enemies of Nazis, communists, nationalists, other groups of partisan, just people who were caught in the middle of the city. So over 2 years, many people were killed. And then every group of victims started trying to commemorate their victims. And dozens of small, big monuments appeared there for priests who were killed there, for other people. And that's all out there. So it's also an important way how we deal with it, how we work around it. And next slide, please. And what we try to do, we try to find a way how we unite the topography, the historical events, the existing dozens of monuments, and how we create a new memorial that will create a journey that will be of emotional journey for the visitors. Next slide, please. This is the team behind Artistic Concept, led by Ilya Khrzhanovsky, Artistic Director of the Foundation, with historians, artists, both Ukrainian, international, educators, and this is the team behind the concept that you will all see part of it already today on the territory. Next slide, please. A couple of words about the key pillars of this, that art, architecture, and nature, they are the essential part of this journey to the past about this tragedy. And it's important that this story of Babyn Yar has universal implications, and that we try to create this emotional journey to create empathy, so that people understand it's not about 100,000 people, it's not about 2.5 million people. It's about every person and every woman and child and man who was killed there, and in other places like this, because we need to draw lessons to understand our history and its impact on us today. And it has impact, as you will see, you will notice today on the territory. Next slide, please. So we will walk only through small part of the complex today, but you must understand that it's It's a long, long walk if we go through it. And the idea is to develop a complex that will grow gradually year by year. Next slide, please. So that we will create a group of museums and artistic objects there. Next slide, please. So the main museum there will be Museum of Holocaust in Ukraine and Eastern Europe. And we will also create a museum for other groups of victims of Babyn Yar. Also the Museum of History of Oblivion of the tragedy during the Soviet times. And also there was another tragedy that happened 20 years as a result of trying to erase this site that created a mudslide that killed hundreds of people in Kyiv. And there will be a small museum for that as well. We also will create educational, scientific centers and number of spiritual places for prayer for different people, groups of people, a number of artistic installations. Next slide, please. And this is how it will look on the map. So this is the territory that is now being pulled together from different legal entities, together with the government, that we're trying to create a public-private partnership, and we're trying to do it together. Next slide. And this is the first part of the territory that is already out there, out of all of those places. And this is the first part of the memorial, where there is a memorial to the names of the victims, the synagogue, the artistic installation, the Crystal Wall of Crying, and the first museum space that is still being built, but we will today visit the site of the creation of this museum. And I will be showing you the territory, so I don't say goodbye. I just invite you to come with me and continue this presentation on the place, on the location. Thank you.
Ruslan, I think I speak for everyone here when I say that your work and the work of the Babyn Yar Holocaust Memorial Center is incredibly important. I think Father Dubois touched upon one of the challenges earlier on, that when we're talking about Auschwitz-Birkenau, we have the barbed wire, we have the walls, we have the sites of the gas chambers. Here, you're building a project from nothing. There's no existing infrastructure, which in a way gives you a lot of latitude, but it presents its own challenges of how to do it in the most respectful way possible. And based on that presentation that we've just seen, you're more than doing that. So once again, a huge congratulations to you and your team for this work. I would say before we move on to our next panel as well, Ruslan was mentioning Mr. Zabarko, who spoke with us yesterday. Mr. Zabarko very, very kindly has a number of books, which on your way out, you will find somebody from the Babyn Yar Holocaust Memorial Center who has some of those books, as well as information about the center we're about to visit. So please, on your way out, avail yourself of a bag, and we thank the Babyn Yar Holocaust Memorial Center for their generosity. And if it's not a strange thing to say, I'm personally very, very much looking forward to the tour, and you've given me a very strong visual picture, and I'm very, very much looking forward to seeing it. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go straight from, if you will, the past to Jewish life in Europe today. I would like to invite up for our next panel Rabbi Meir Stambler, the President of the Federation of Jewish Communities of Ukraine, Rabbi Avi Lazarus, who's the CEO of the UK Federation of Synagogues, and Dr. Leah Flo Aran, the President of the Jewish Community of München-Gladbach, Wiesen in Germany for a brief discussion. Thank you. Okay. So, as I was saying, we spend a lot of time talking about the past, and rightly so. Memory is extremely important. Indeed, we're coming up to International Holocaust Memorial Day this Thursday. But it would be remiss of us, before we go to Babyn Yar, not to talk about the challenges affecting Jews across this continent today. So I'm going to start with Rabbi Stambler. I have this impression, right or wrong, that when it comes to anti-Semitism, there is more or less still an iron curtain in Europe. And what I mean by that is that there is a sense of old-fashioned anti-Semitism which still exists on the eastern side of Europe, but there doesn't seem to be as much anti-Zionism and the kind of anti-Semitism which has been imported into Europe because of migrants. Can you give a sense of what it's like and some of the challenges that you have on a day-to-day in Ukraine as a leader of a federation?
Well, actually, what you say is basically what Jews around the world feel, because when, so many Jews are actually, their roots are from Ukraine or from the post-Soviet Union. And this is the way it used to be. I'm sure there still exists. What I would say is that we are somewhere in between. Of course, we don't have, what we have today in Europe, like many Islams, and the Zionist. But on the other hand, I would like to say like this: the older people, they just hate a Jew. But in Ukraine, something unique is happening. There's a new generation that are looking forward, a new generation that feel that they have to change. And this change is in many things, on values, on tradition, on right of religion. And I really feel that the young people look differently at a Jew. That's number one. And number two, one of the problems we have of anti-Semitism is that people have no idea. They're afraid of anyone strange. They don't know, especially if you look to Jewish. They don't know anything about you. And if they don't know, it makes them feel very uncomfortable. Now, for the past 30 years, we've been developing Jewish life over here. And people realize what it means to be a Jew. We're very active, very part of the population. And people mention it today and last night. When a Jew is proud of his Judaism, I think that's the biggest fight of anti-Semitism. When you walk on the street and you feel comfortable and you're proud, or you're not embarrassed, and you talk. In Dnipropetrovsk, the city where I'm from there, the community built a 60,000 square meters building, a gigantic community center. Now, part of the community center, the idea was not just for Jews, for local people to see what it means to be a Jew. That's number one. Now, to make sure this building should be able to keep up, we needed to rent out square meters. So there's cafes, restaurants, In the beginning, when we built this building, everybody told us, you guys are nuts. You won't be able to keep up this building. Who's going to walk into this place? So we tried, everyone that has to do with community. If you have a meeting with a person, invite him to sit and drink coffee. So some of the people in the beginning said, well, I'm not Jewish. I said, no, don't worry. You'll have a moil, you'll have a circumcision right as you walk in, and you'll be fine. So people, this means when you have people drinking coffee together, just talking, discussing, it breaks the ice. Every person that lives a Jewish life and is not embarrassed with it, it changes everything. I feel it on a daily basis. Me personally, I never felt fear of anti-Semitism. I feel very comfortable. Sometimes you feel in the eyes that people don't like you, but as I said yesterday, I really feel that the people, majority of the people are nice, loyal, and they appreciate the Jews. The Jews do a lot for the country.
Rabbi Stambler, we're looking behind us as a menorah from Babyn Yar, but there's been a couple of incidents, and it seems to be every year, the Chanukia, for instance, somebody seems to kick a Chanukia down. Is that just isolated, or is it a general feeling here in Ukraine that any other symbols which are, you kind of spoke about a foreignness or other, that fear of the other, is that something that Jews always have to be aware of? The fact of, how does one balance that pride with a visible demonstration such as a Chanukia in, I don't know, Maidan Square, for instance? Is that a challenge?
That's a very, very good question. And many people, even Jews, criticize us because, you know, as Chabad, we're very, very published. And if you come outside in the street, which is, it's not Israel, okay, and you put up a big Chanukia, so of course, it brings some kind of trouble. But on the other hand, as I said before, we're bringing something very nice to the world. We're bringing a light to the world. We feel as Jews responsible to help make this world a better place. And we won't stop. So what you see now, by the way, I want to tell you that the government dealt with it very fast. They were caught within a few hours. I haven't seen it in other countries. Sure. Lately, what we see now is that Jews feel more comfortable. They complain, and they go out to the press. These stories that you see on news now were happening all the time, but people were putting it under the carpet. So in a way, of course, you know, there's a bad side of it, but I really see a very positive side in these ideas.
Thank you, Rav Stambler. Rabbi Avi Lazarus, super interesting point that Rav Stambler just mentioned there was this question of reporting and this question of people feeling more confident to report. As someone who has a number of family in the UK myself, I know that a lot of Jews there just want to keep their head down. They want to stay quiet. They'd rather not report incidents of, let's call it, casual anti-Semitism that they encounter on a day-to-day business. So I want to ask you what the experience is in the UK, and also, is there a contradiction, if you will, between this notion of Jewish pride, this need to, or this desire to be confident about who we are, but at the same time having to more or less barricade ourselves inside synagogues with security and all the rest of it? How do you, as a leader of a community, how do you balance these two things?
Thank you, Alex. So firstly, within the UK, and I think generally within the free world, it does seem a little strange and bizarre to be discussing anti-Semitism as if it's a huge problem today, because on the surface, the Jewish people throughout the world have never had more freedom, more rights, more respect, more acceptability, and protection from the legal establishments. And that's definitely the case in the UK. There are government representatives who are Jews and who are supportive of the Jewish community. So in some ways, it feels like we're even behaving a little bit like spoiled children, but that's not the truth, because as we saw in the last Gaza conflict, simmering below the surface is a very dangerous, latent disdain of Jews. It was Senator the senator from Poland, Kaminski, yesterday,
Yeah, Senator Kaminski.
who said that anti-Semitism existed before the Holocaust, and its anti-Semitic rhetoric existed before the Holocaust and after the Holocaust. It hasn't gone. What appeared so worrying this time, and I think in my lifetime has increased in recent years, is that when the flare-ups in Israel in particular happen, it's used as an excuse to change the context of society, to change the feeling on the street, to allow those who have a hatred of Jews to come to the fore and to behave with immunity. I saw it myself this summer. There were groups of youths, Muslim youths, on the streets in Edgware, where I live, which is a very Jewish area, intimidating my children, young Jewish children, outside my synagogue on my street. We called the police and we called the Community Security Trust, which is the organization that provides security for the Jewish community in England. But they didn't know really how to deal with it. It was a very strange scenario. You're right, in England, we do generally like to keep our heads below the parapet. And I think something changed probably 3 or 4 years ago when the threat from Jeremy Corbyn happened. We could no longer do that. But generally, I would say, I go back to my original comments that Jewish life is very easy and very good. Legally, we have just as many rights as anybody else. If anything, the threat on the Jewish community, particularly the religious Jewish community in England, is not necessarily a physical threat that we fear being beaten up. The Jewish people have always had that. Now the threat is coming from those who are threatening Jewish life. There are secularists, I would say very religious secularists, who want to take away our right for Shrita and Mila, and crucially, they want to interfere with our education. And once that happens, once they start telling us what we can and can't educate our children, so that's the greatest danger to the Jewish community in the UK. And that, if anything, is what will cause the Jews certainly the religious Jews, to flee the UK.
Sure. This is clearly a big challenge for us as well, as in the European Jewish Association. I mean, we spend a lot of time, rightly, focusing on anti-Semitism, and rightly on that virulent strain of anti-Zionism that you were talking about. But our chairman, Rabbi Margolin, myself, and others, Rav Jacobs is here as well. We see a real fundamental threat to Jewish life in laws against Brit Milah, in laws against Shrita, that at the end of the day will amount to the same thing, because they make Jewish life impossible, just impossible. So Dr. Flo, you're in charge of, you look after the community in Mönchengladbach. Have you noticed yourself some of the change in mood that Rabbi Lazarus was talking about? I noticed during the summer, after the Gaza operation, the first time in Germany that I saw people in the street burning Israeli flags. What are the particular challenges facing you in Germany? I mean, Germany obviously has the horrible history associated with it. What are your challenges as a community leader, and what hope do you have for the future of your community?
I live in Germany nearly 30 years. I came from Israel, and I'm more than 18 years the president of the Jewish community in Mönchengladbach. And of course, I can manage the community life so that our people will not suffer from anti-Semitic attacks and so on. I saw that 2014, when the borders were opened for refugees, the anti-Semitism in Germany will start to be not only from left, from right, from the middle of society, but also import anti-Semitism. And demonstrations, anti-Semitic, anti-Israel demonstrations in Düsseldorf, 2014, with big placards where we're reaching Hamas, Hamas, Juden in Gas, also Hamas, Hamas, Jews in Gaskammer, or we still have place for Jews in concentration camps. And in Mönchengladbach, one woman during such demonstration, 2014, said in microphone that Jews continue to kill Christian children and to drink their blood. I was thinking where I am in the middle age, what I'm hearing here. And after every time when there's a conflict between Israel and in Gaza, we feel it even more. For example, was February last year, we came to the synagogue in the morning and we saw that our Magen David on the wall was full with eggs. In the time when police car with 2 policemen stayed 24 hours for the community. And of course I informed police and we gave them a video which we made on our own. And which answer did they get from police? You know, that's not anti-Semitic. You know, this is a carnival tradition in Germany to throw the eggs.
You're kidding me.
Yeah, no, I'm not kidding you. The police kidding me. And we have to clarify the situation. But such answer for the representative from the city police, this really, you can feel that they're kidding you, that it's maybe really a joke. And such situation there and here, you can find a lot. After this violence attack in Halle 2 years ago, police stayed 24 hours near the synagogue. After 1 year, they changed the situation. The police stays only when we have Jewish Hanukkah, Pesach, then police stayed near synagogue. Later on, they stayed again 24 hours. And even when we have funerals in the Jewish cemeteries, also police must stay there. In the cities near Mönchengladbach, all Jews also belong to our community. In the lift with big houses with many flats, you can also find Jews away from Germany. They wrote it with color on the walls. So the situation becoming more and more worse. And I told many times, also on the 9th of November, on the night of synagogues pogrom from 1938, what we celebrate every year, that Jews in Germany, and especially in Mönchengladbach, fill them so that they sit on the packed suitcases to be ready to leave Germany. And we feel that Jewish life is not anymore a wish of German population, of course not only German. To speak about statistic, it was 2,331 attacks against Jews in 2020. and 57 of these were with violence. Only in Berlin, 2021, were 157 attacks against Jews, and many of them registered by police as violence. And the statistic we can continue. Of course, our president of the Jewish Council in Germany, Dr. Schuster, gave us an advice not to carry Magen David or not to go with a kippah. It's dangerous. And sorry, I'm also the member in the board of the Central Council and also a member in many years in the board of the National Council in North Rhine. But I will not hear this to this word and will not follow this word.
So Dr. Flo, it's basically we don't mind you being a Jew as long as you don't show it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. I want to stay to my identity and I don't want to hide it.
Okay.
And there are so many still child survivors. Also, only in my community, there are 125 child survivors. And of course, we had to think that today we are here and we will go now to Babyn Yar, and we have to understand that there will be anytime less and less survivors, eyewitnesses. We will have less and less possibility to hear their stories. We will have less possibilities to hold their hand and to feel how blood freezes in the veins. And that's why this is our obligation to remember and not only to speak about never again and nie wieder, wie man auf Deutsch sagt.
Thank you, Dr. Flo. That seems a good place to park this discussion for now. I would encourage everyone in the audience to have an opportunity to talk to both rabbis and indeed Dr. Flo, because understanding it's very important to remember and talk about the Holocaust and anti-Semitism in that context, but talk to Jews today about their experience and find out what is going on in communities is every bit as important. I'd like to thank our panelists. Thank you so much for sharing some time with us. And we'll move on because Dr. Flo mentioned as a last thought before we start moving towards Babyn Yar, but there are very, very few survivors left. And indeed, please panelists, thank you so much for your time. Also, Dr. Flo, on a positive, I didn't get a chance. Dr. Flo had some good news recently. She got married, so I think we can all wish her a hearty Mazel Tov and congratulations. Thank you. I'm going to invite my colleague, Mr. Tal Rabina, who's our Director of Strategy, who last week in Israel traveled up to the north to meet with and interview a survivor of Babyn Yar. And Tal, you've got it from here, my friend.
Thank you, Alex. I'm going to tell you about Michael. He, back then, was 6 years old. He lived about 4.5 kilometers from here. He had a mother, a father, and 4 brothers and sisters. They had some problems because their neighbor, Lushka, who was a street cleaner, snitched on them to the Gestapo once and twice, and they made it peacefully out of the situation. Unfortunately, on Yom Kippur, September, 8 years ago, she did it on the 3rd time. and the Gestapo captured them all and sent them to Babyn Yar. The mother was holding little Clara, 3.5 years old, in one hand. In the other hand, she held Vladimir, 4 months old. Michael was holding the hand of his big brother, Grisha, and they were forced to go to Babyn Yar with all other Jews. Michael Sitko, the hero of this story, is 86 years old as of today. We tried to bring him to meet you all, and we did all the efforts because he's the only survivor we know of that lives to this date. Unfortunately, due to his health condition and the health condition of his wife, he couldn't make it. So I asked my colleague, Miri Tzimchi, from my office in Israel, to go to his home in Bet Shemesh, which is a town on the way between Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and to interview him. Let's share his story. Miri? We hope to see Miri and Mr. Michael Sitko. I hope it will take a minute. Here it
כן,
is.
שלום טל, שלום לכל הנכבדים שם בקייב. Мы находимся в Израиле, в городе Бейт-Шемеш, у Михаила Ситько, единственного выжившего в Бабyn-Яр. Расскажите нам, пожалуйста, что вам пришлось пережить в сентябре 41-го в этом месте?
Miri, maybe we can stop for just a minute. תעצרו את הוידאו רגע. We'll wait for just 1 minute so my colleagues are handing you the translation earphones in 1 minute, please. איתן, אם אתה יכול להביא לי גם אחד? תודה. Okay, we'll go back to Israel, to Bet Shemesh. Please. Play.
Вспоминая прошлое, мне хочется пожелать вам всем добра, здоровья, и чтобы никто, ни дети ваши,
Это нормально.
ни дети ваши, ни внуки не знали, что такое война.
Сколько вам было лет, когда вы там оказались?
Значит, мне было 6 лет, брату было 13, сестре 3,5, сестре Кларе, и Володя, 4-месячный ребенок, был у мамы на руках. Одним словом, нас было 4 детей с мамой. Брат Гриша 28-го года, я 36-го.